Okay, so now we're going to have a quick look at... oh, look, I've actually done those first 4 points without even looking. Here we go. Okay, so I want to talk about how to vote. Now, here we go here. So these are the two ballots. These are actual ballots. So green one. The green one is always the lower house. Think grass is on the ground. It's on the lower house. It's actually the color of the house. All the leather inside is green. But it doesn't work when we go to this because this is the Senate and the Senate's red, but this is white. This is our Senate ballot right here. Big long one. In 2016, it was actually almost twice the length of that. It was so big it wasn't funny. 122 candidates in that election. It was crazy. Now, a couple of things to note on this one. You'll see a big black line in the middle. All right, it's a big black line. So there's an upper part and a lower part on a Senate ballot. Now the upper part over here, it actually says there are two ways to vote in this election, meaning the Senate election. You can vote above the line for 6 candidates, numbering them consecutively, 1 to 6, or you can vote below the line, 1 to 6. Now I'll fold this in half so I can handle it. So, what does that actually mean? What that means is this, and I'll find, here we go. This is the LNP right here in this column. Just here. Now, when you put a number 6 in their box, or don't vote for them at all, this is my advice. Some people have said, what are you going to do in the Senate election? Remember I said, the Senate is the people's house of review. Who do you want reviewing policy that the lower house put through? Do you want Liberal or Labor reviewing that now? You want someone with a brain, someone who's not towing a party line, someone who's going to represent our values, right? So, I'm personally, and this is not the party line, though it probably is actually, but I will not be voting for Labor and Liberal at all, or the Greens, in this ballot. Not at all. Okay? And I'm doing that strategically. Because remember, by default, in days gone by, they have got senators elected purely by a preferential system. Now, there has been confusion with preferencing. And people say, yes, but your party chooses where my vote goes. That was true prior to 2016 election. Now, what was true about that is there was a different law in place. Does anyone remember a political party called the Motorist Party, and a guy called Ricky Moore? Yeah, he got in on some crazy, you might want to look him up and see if you can find what percent, because I can't remember, it was like 1.5%. So he got elected as a senator. Ricky, M-I-U-R, I think. Ricky Moore. You might want to put Senator. Yeah, that's him right there. Now, he got elected now by a guy who is called the Vote Whisperer. And this all sounds crazy, right? It really does sound crazy. But what had happened since 1949, is in compulsory voting, when you put a 1 above the line, what would happen is parties would have made deals with each other, and when you did that vote, you were voting for whatever order they had pre-selected for you and your vote, which meant they were now shaping the way preferences were flowing in order to pick up votes or pick up seats, kind of by colluding together. And they had been successful at it, very successful, because they had stacked the houses. And that was the days when we had rubber stamp Senate. That's what we need. It's the best thing for Australia. No, it's not the best thing for Australia, but that's what they were getting. And in the 2013 election, Ricky Moore got elected by having his guys mathematically worked out the system to best advantage them, and they won. Okay, so what do you think the Liberal and Labor Party are going to do for 2016 election? They're going to change the law. And they did about 2 weeks before they called the election. They changed the law and removed that preferencing system So when people say, yes, but you determine where our preference goes, that was true prior to 2016. That was absolutely true, and it was a corruption of our system. Now, the solution they offered was not actually a step up from there. It was just a means of not letting that happen again. It was taking away the opportunity of people doing what they'd been doing for 60 years. Okay? So you're starting to get a sense of how politics works when we have two parties who have a supermajority and stronghold over things that affect us, of which we are sovereign to choose, but we have no real choice because the deck is stacked against us. But it doesn't have to be. Now we have new laws that have come in. Even for this election, the laws have changed. They don't really affect the voters much, they affected parties. So they did things like a political party cannot use a word that is in one of the major parties. You can't use, Liberal Party. You can't use National Party. You can't have Labor Party. So there were some parties that had those words in their name, had to be struck off. Okay? And that's just to remove competition again. So whenever you see people acting this way, and we see it now, put up signs, we come back and they're knocked over again. We put up signs, we come back and they're knocked over again. Because their way of dealing with this is actually trying to manhandle us and remove our influence and space. They're trying to take us out, get rid of us, so that we don't actually offend them by challenging them for the power, basically, to take it off them. And it's often like a child with a lollipop, and when you give a child a lollipop and try and take it off them, they have a little cry and a hissy fit, and that is what we're seeing at the moment. So those changes were only around making it difficult. It also increased the number of votes. I ran in Senate twice as an independent. One of those times, I'll explain this one too. This is quite interesting. Remember I said you have two ways to vote, above and below the line, unless, of course, you're an independent. And because you're an independent, you're called ungrouped. And you're not allowed to be here, so all the grouped people get first preference on above the line, and independents have to go below the line, so you can't vote above for them. You can't vote two ways for independents. You can only vote one way, which is below the line, and they send them all the way to the last column here, where there's no branding above at all, you see? No boxes. So you can't vote two ways for them, which means, and here's where it gets complicated, because only 7, sometimes to 12% of the population ever vote below the line. Okay, so tell me, what's the chances or likelihood of someone being elected from below the line? It is very low, very, very, very low. So if you've got people running, is there equality here? There's no equality at all. It's absolute rubbish. But this is what we have for now. And so we can't whinge and complain too much. We just have to proceed. But I thought I'd explain that so you know. And you start seeing why it's so difficult to actually break this cycle. And I call this actually domestic violence in my mind. These people are domestically violent against the Australian people by doing such things as this, because we suffer under the policy that they force upon us. Okay? Now, so how do we vote? Above the line, 1 to 6. So you can, if you put a 1 in any of these boxes, this is what happens. And it's really important you actually know what happens when you do a 1. We'll find little LNP again. There they are. They got the little devil's tail on the end of their logo. Just pointing that out. No. It does look like that though. So here's the LNP. When you put a 1 above that box, or above the line, above the big black line, when you put a 1 there, what happens is you're voting for everyone below the line in that order. Okay? So, yes, when you put a 1 here, you're actually saying, I want these people in that order that the parties put them, and it will go that person first. If they don't get enough, that person, that person, that person, that person, until it's exhausted, which means there's no one left, and then they'll go to your number 2, and it'll be this box, and it'll be everyone underneath that. So when you vote above, that's what happens to your vote. Now, in 2013, for example, 2016 it was, sorry, there was a lot in the Christian community who were concerned about marriage, and they were voting a 1 in L&P because certain organisations said to do that. Put a 1 there, and they will trust, and they're to be trusted with your vote. That's a Conservative vote. And I had already done a review of all, at the time they had 8 candidates underneath, and I had done a review of all of their personal opinions. Now remember, the important issues in society, the important moralistic or value ones that we all do, they're not determined by a political party's policy. They're determined by a candidate's or a member's conscience alone. Think about that. On the things that really matter, the real ones, the big ones, those decisions are not made by what a party has on their platform. They're made by what that person actually believes.
Is that in the Labor Party too, or just the Liberals?
Labor's slightly different. Sometimes Labor will do a party line, and they'll say, this is our party line on this value, and everyone, but I've seen people still cross. But it's still offered as a conscience vote. And if a party takes the line, they can, but most people are given a conscience vote. Well, that's particularly concerning for me, and it should concern you, because when you vote above that line for that 1, it's a blank check. You're basically saying whatever policy comes up in the next 3 years, I'm trusting it to these people to make the decision for you. So I would go, well, I want to know who they are. I want to know what they think on certain issues. What if you've got people in here who, I don't know, they like the idea of drugging us or something with some drug by putting it in water or whatever, I don't know. And that's their belief. And next minute that's going to become law because they stacked both houses and there's no one to resist it. You've got no chance of defending anything. So it actually means as a responsible elector, we do need to be responsible and start analysing who these people are. And I get emails. You do at the moment, well, from the minute an election is looming, people will say, I'm a candidate, I'm a candidate, I'm a candidate. You can track some down until nominations close, and they closed on Tuesday, I think it was. And nominations closes when the AEC says our books are now closed. No, we will not receive any more nominations for candidacy in these seats. At that point, you know who is actually now in that election. That information is on the AEC's website. The AEC's website is actually very good. It's got so much information. Actually, if Jace, bring up that Word document and just hit on the top 2 lines, just hit here. So for example, House of Review, if you click, that's just a hot link. This is the AEC website. Let's just scroll up a little. Come up a little bit more. Here it tells you exactly what you have to do. Come up a bit more, it tells you what's a formal vote. It also come up a bit more, what's the informal votes. It says it's a blank or unmarked, and it goes through each one. It says here, if a House of Representatives ballot has all squares numbered consecutively but 1, then it is assumed that the unmarked square constitutes the last preference. So you see how that works, and therefore it's valid. If you scroll up a little bit more, it actually says, I might have missed it, you can actually do some test voting. You can actually go and practice how to vote, which is a great idea. But we very rarely even look at these tools, but they are there. Anyway, just for an example. So here you go. You can tell that this person here is an independent. How do we know they're an independent? Because there's no logo. And they get forced to put certain phrasing under their names. It's really quite an evil when I look at it and I go, how do we let all this happen? Because they've literally gone through and gone, oh, we can get an advantage there. Oh, we can get an advantage here. We can get an advantage there. And these are laws that actually go through the lower house, ascend up the top, get approved through the Senate without us knowing, though they're right there in front of us. And then next minute, there it is. It's now in law, and now we suffer as a result. So we actually do elect the misery that we happen to be in, but we also can elect the salvation that comes out of it if we choose the right leaders to actually rebuke a lot of this and push back. So make no mistake, when you vote here, you're voting for everyone in that column. So when it says a minimum 6, you can, if there's 20 candidates across, you can do 1 to 20. You can do anything as long as you've got a minimum of 6. If you choose to vote below the line, then below the line's more surgical, okay? So we're getting really precise now. I'm going to say we're going to vote below the line in this column here, and I don't like that first guy at all. So I'm not going to vote above because he's, I don't know, he kills koala bears on weekends, and I don't like that, right? But I like the second guy because he goes and puts them back together and gets them back out on the road again. So off the road, actually. We don't want koala bears on the road. So I go, okay, what I'm going to do instead, the instructions are you have to vote for a minimum of 12 candidates. So above is 6, below is 12, which is double. Now you can go and say, I'm going to do 1 here, but I like this guy on the bottom, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get to choose. Now it's difficult and confronting because now you've got to know who they are. And you may have heard me say in one election there was 122 candidates, that whopping great long ballot, biggest we've ever had, and there were only 21 that actually had values that I shared. Only 21. And I knew where they were. And I was able to go through and, like a surgeon, pick them up and find where they were and vote for those alone. Incidentally, I sent that information out to lots of organisations who weren't interested because they went, LNP will save us. And here we are. Here we are. And you guys, I can assure you, you guys are here only because they didn't. Authorised by Tony Moore, candidate for Fisher, the United Australia Party, 153 Goodling Drive, Mirramack, Queensland, 4226.